And hello everyone and welcome to the Trekyards Mission Briefing, your weekly dose of ship, station, shuttle, pod, everything Trek discussion. We do it all, guys, for you. Discussion, first look, and, discuss it so you guys tell us what you think so we can put it all in the final show. We're doing something kind of cool today. What are we doing, Stuart?
We're doing something that's not actually real. Wait a minute. None of the Star Trek ships we do it. This is different, though. This is an animated ship, so it's not, you know what I mean. It's not real. It's an animated ship. And today we're looking at one of the most important ships in Starfleet history,
Wow.
the USS Bonaventure from Star Trek the Animated Series.
Now, it's worth pointing out that we, are as close as you can get to sort of Trek ship experts. And I had heard about this ship. I didn't know about it already. But for those who don't know, and looking at this first picture, this interesting side view, which is just from the non-amazingly ship-minded, it's a very weirdly sort of fat and thin and compressed Connie. What is the USS Bonaventure, and why? And if it's one of the most important ships of all time, why is it never mentioned?
Well, it is mentioned a few times in different lore, and there are a few versions of it, which we'll get into. But it was the first warp ship designed by Zefram Cochrane, and then in the animated series, it got lost and was lost for a long time. They didn't know where it happened to it. Yeah. So it is important. It is an important ship in that regard, but there is a lot of controversy around it because there are a few different versions of it and a few different stories about it. And anyway, let's just look at this fine ship from the animated series.
So you're saying the first warp ship, obviously it can't be the first breaking the lightspeed barrier when that was the Phoenix, and it seems odd.
The Phoenix didn't exist at that point, so just saying.
Well, it seems kind of ridiculous that the first warp ship is just a Connie but squished, and 10211 or 028 NCC. It's not even the right way around. So it's the 28th ship, or the 27 ships without warp, I guess, in the NCC fleet, and they all. This is a. Well, let's get into that in a minute. So, okay, were you around watching when the animated series came out first run?
I was around, but I wasn't watching it.
Okay, so when you first watched the show and first got a grasp of this as a vessel, what did you think of its design and what were your interpretation? It's a good question, isn't it?
I thought it was ugly. I still think it's ugly. It's an awful design.
But is it fugly or is it just ugly?
It grows on you a little bit, so it is kind of fugly after a while. I don't know. It's just, you can tell what they did. They just took Connie and just modified parts of it to make something newish. And not a lot of thought was put into it, I don't think.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I must have seen that in the actual animated series itself, but never really grasped a hold. And then I think through, just random seeings, then when researching this ship, when we first started, because I think this was one of the few you wanted to do quite early on. I remember that coming up, so I saw pictures, I was like, oh yeah, that's that, okay, great. And it's like almost the worst kind of kit bash, because we're gonna kit bash the shape into the same shape, but just butcher it, and I don't think there's any reason for any of it necessarily. Well, I mean, there's things and there's reasons. I mean, was the Daedalus around at this point, or was this pre-Daedalus design?
This was, I believe, pre-Daedalus.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, yes.
So I guess you kind of make a leap that front bit, the deflector, it's more of a cylinder, is a callback to the Daedalus where they had a cylinder secondary hull, so they were advancing it by bulking it up. But it would seem very strange that, I know obviously ship designs don't change that radically, I mean, the Connie to the refit, but the D7 to the Katinga, but this is it's the same shape, they just happen to, so if this is the evolution, it's NCC 028, so 1,500 ships later.
Not necessarily. I hate when people do that just because the number's that high means that's how many ships are made. It's not really a thing.
We don't really stick by that, but roughly, in a sense, it's at least in a sense that's what they're saying. And all they did was they stretched out the saucer. They basically just pulled everything thinner that's what they did if you think about the evolution. All the same colours, still NCC. The Bassards are now more advanced than the Cage for some reason, because why not?
Just because. Yeah, so anyway, this was the first ship that had warp installed, and it got lost in some kind of time warp vortex thing caused by these enhanced warp engines, or these new engine style.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and this is the first. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan when I first saw this one.
Did this premiere in the animated series, or was this designed before that? Do you know?
Well, this was designed for the animated series, I believe.
Okay, so it was
certain on that, but
was Gene specifically involved in the animated series? I can't remember if he was or wasn't. I think he was.
He had his hands in it. I don't know how directly involved he was, especially with like ship design and stuff. I don't think that was his thing. It was more left to the animators.
Since in terms of TOS, I mean, obviously it's commonly considered that one episode of the one where Spock goes back in time to save himself, that's considered sort of the closest to canon. Everything else is not really. So this would obviously fall in that, especially since it's now.
Yesteryear is the only one that was considered canon. Although lately I've heard that they have included the animated series as canon now. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know how official that is.
I'm sure it's all the bits that don't affect anything else in the universe they call canon. That sort of way. It's like if it doesn't interfere.
Yeah.
So. Okay, first warp ship. Now, I read an audiobook where they found, I think it was when the first warp ship, is an old TOS one as well, right at the edge of the galaxy, and they discovered it. There's a crazy crew, and also something else. But it's kind of it's a name I've always heard, and it's
I'm wondering.
Strange ship.
I think. I'm hesitant to say this, but I think it was actually mentioned once in TOS. But I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Anyway, let's go to the next picture real quick. And this is it from actually in the show where they discover all these lost ships that have been trapped in the time vortex. So this is actually what you see on screen.
So this is it's sort of canonical put in. I mean, it's.
It looks like it has a face. It has eyes.
It's interesting. This version, this angle. If you look at the secondary hull, it looks like the Pasteur's hull, like the way it's shaped, almost identical.
It does, yeah.
The engines obviously have more of a to be fair, the engines have a JJ vibe. How they bulk out at the end.
Yeah, I
flip
guess.
them.
Yeah.
And the deflector is just like a tiddly little one. Yeah. I mean,
it's interesting. Okay. Well, there's not much to say really about this picture, so I don't know. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
Here we get some interesting.
Huh.
So,
wow,
quite a bit smaller than the Connie.
Very much. I mean, that's smaller than the NX, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it's shorter than the NX. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, what's that? Maybe one deck for the edge of the saucer, a single deck, and then everything else is more decks.
Looks like it. Yeah, it definitely looks that way.
Wow. I mean, that's
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably, I'm thinking like 13, 14 decks, maybe. I'm kind of guessing.
And not a lot of room. I mean, if this is the first warp-capable ship, well, it shows we like the same shape, but it's a very, very small ship. I mean, do you think this was... I mean, what was actually the episode about? I mean, do they go into any detail about how fast the ship could go? Was it the first Warp 1 ship? Was it the first colonization ship? Did it say anything else that you remember?
I think all it said was it was the first ship equipped with warp drive.
Okay.
I don't think they got into specifics about speed. Just that it disappeared in one of its test runs or whatever. So, yeah, that's a good question. Again, don't quote me on that. There might be a speed mentioned, but I know it did say it was the first ship with warp and was installed. So,
yeah, if anything, it kind of shows that this Bonaventure class ship. It kind of looks like the off-brand Enterprise. It shows actually how amazing the Connie shape is, that every part of it works so nicely and looks like a professional, sleek ship, and then take the same shapes, do some stuff with them, and suddenly it doesn't work. And that shows how amazing the original was, that this knockoff doesn't work.
it's kind of like knockoff toys, like a
Yep.
really cheap Chinese transformer that they change a few things on so they can
It's
avoid the
Blego.
copyright claims.
It's the Blego ship.
Yes, exactly.
How many crew do you think this would hold? I mean, this is not a big ship.
Oh, that's a good question. 50 to 100 possibly
Mm-hmm.
would be my guess. I can't see it holding very much. I mean, judging by that scale chart, it does there is quite a bit of internal volume, but you would think if it was the first ship fitted with warp drive, a lot of it would probably be engineering and things like that to make that warp drive system work. So who's to say
Yeah.
really how much?
I can imagine the engineering would be a lot larger. But let's go
I'm
to the
looking
next.
forward to. I'm
Sorry.
looking forward to doing a full episode on this and maybe actually learning some of these things. I don't even know if people have done stats and statistics for this ship. It could be. I mean, we don't know. We'll find out.
Maybe it's your chance to do a mini Trekyards original on it in a sense, Stuart. Try and do some dissections and things. Because I mean, okay, if we did a full episode and okay, break this down. In your mind, does this ship exist in the universe of Star Trek? Is this still a canonical piece of your headcanon, even though now we know about all this actual canon and external stuff?
I would say no.
Okay. Interesting. Even though you're
But
such a TOS purist. Interesting.
exactly. But if we go to the next picture,
Hmm.
this ship, which looks a lot like Battlestar Galactica, is actually the USS Bonaventure from Rick Sternbach's brilliant mind and his spaceflight chronology from back in the 70s.
And I do recognise this one fondly.
Yeah, we talk about it in our Phoenix episode.
Yeah. And this is also so same backstory. First warp capable ship.
First enhanced warp ship.
Okay. Interesting.
I forget the exact statistics. It could actually go warp 3,
Okay.
2.5, 3, something like that. It was the fastest one developed at the time, and it was designed by Zefram Cochrane, and he was on a colony because he went to a different planet,
Alpha Centauri.
Alpha Centauri, on a colony ship, and developed this there, and it started becoming the new ship because it had the most powerful engines.
Well,
fast.
I mean, warp 1 is great, but you can't travel to Vulcan fast enough for it to be necessarily worthwhile. So you need to up that speed. So it's the first interplanetary ship. I mean, this fits into canon way nicer, and I would almost call this, the Phoenix is such a ruggedly, it's a rocket with a warp drive. That's what it is. I mean, while the engines look like our contemporary drive, which pushes it a little bit like, oh, okay, why did it look so similar? This, I think, could easily be, okay, we've got some money behind it, we can build this bigger engine, let's push into, later, a bigger ship, and a bit more advanced. But it looks more advanced in the sense that it's more like a spaceship, but less advanced in the sense it's clearly like a 70s design, as opposed to a Trekkie 2159 design. But that's fine. I would still think this fits in fine as a first warp 3.
It does fit in, and we even talked about that in our Phoenix episode that it could still be the first, not the ship that broke the warp barrier, but the one that
Made warp a thing.
moved it to the next step, made it practical. Yeah, exactly. It was still long trips between systems with this, like a few years, but it was cut down dramatically because of this new warp drive. So it could be that Zefram Cochrane did use the Phoenix to break the sound barrier, and then did use a colony ship to go to Alpha Centauri. So it even ties in with the TOS episode Metamorphosis, where Kirk says that's where he's from. You can tie it all together and interweave all these things that don't really line up and actually make them make a little bit of sense.
Well, let me throw in a little thing out at you. This is obviously a for-purpose ship. We can't really tell the scale per se on this.
Okay, so the scale on that is actually 206 meters. And it is the first. It was the first warp 2.5 cruiser, and it was the Cochrane class, the USS Bonaventure. So there you go. 2059 to 2077. It's coming up.
Okay, not that. I don't think those times fit as well, but that's okay. Interesting.
It traveled to Tau Ceti its first trip and was nearly 12 light years away. And this one, too, was actually lost. The Bonaventure was unaccountably lost. during one of its flights. So
it's the Titanic of Star Trek.
it is. It's cursed. I'm telling you.
My thing I was going to throw out about this is that if you look at the I guess the primary module, the head bit, the bridge, that whole module looks in just simple shape. If you were to put two nacelles in it, it'd be very similar to a ship in Enterprise. I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember what it's called. So if you think that is going to be, if the Enterprise is first warp 5, then that might be the first warp. If that's 2.5, that might be the first warp 3, 3, 5, 4. And so you could easily see, okay, this is our rudimentary engine. Boom, and then I know Henry Archer came on at some point. Maybe they reinvented the wheel and brought it back to the engines that they used to use. Oh, well, okay. But you know what I mean? Like this shape there is still that shape in Enterprise. So maybe this is the Star Cruiser, that's the frigate.
There is.
And so
this shape is also reminiscent of the Phoenix with that central body and just kind of the module on the front. It does look very similar. So it does tie in with all that, which is fantastic.
It just feels like a bigger, bulkier, like they're going to overbuild this ship to give it that long space travel vibe. Obviously, the cone at the back doesn't really make a lot of sense. Or to be fair, that could easily just be the impulse drive. And
the cone on the back is actually a solar collector to collect energy.
Oh, well, there you go. Maybe the two external pods do come out a little bit, and that's their warp drive. I mean, very possible. Why not? Maybe they're connected to the drive. Maybe they do, and then it would be actually surprisingly fitting into Star Trek. But let's move on to the next picture. And you've put a picture of a probe thing. What's this?
This is also the UNSS Bonaventure. This is one of those ships in Star Trek that has multiple personalities.
And we're trying to be clear about this to all our fans. Okay. What's the backstory for this one, Stuart? Because it's very different.
This was also talked about in our Phoenix episode, which you have to watch, guys. This was on display in one of the TNG episodes in the classroom. It was labeled the UNSS Bonaventure. It was done by Michael Okuda. It had all the ships leading up to Enterprise. This was one of them. So they ignored the spaceflight chronology, and this was obviously before the Phoenix came out because the Phoenix wasn't on there. But this, and it wasn't obviously the Bonaventure from the animated series. So they've kind of ignored all that, and this was what was on there, which is interesting, and I can see it being a development towards... Especially for a first warp ship, this kind of makes sense. How that front module is shielded from the back part, which is all engine, probably, in case anything happened. I don't know. It's just interesting that I thought I'd throw it in.
So in the sense that it's been on screen, it's the canonical Bonaventure.
Well, the animated series one's been on screen too. And it was
in an animated form, which has not been... you know what I mean? This is interesting because this shows that clearly, and they must have retroactively looked, that the Phoenix has some small basis in this, because, I mean, this is like... I know they said, we've got a missile silo, let's make it missile, but the concept of a rocket, a front pod, the two engines coming out, I mean, that's an obvious evolution of how would you make a first warp ship, but I can easily see this being the next step of the Phoenix, because you take out its need to separate, you have the shield, like, say, it's more powerful engine, you know,
probably
have this bigger pod.
Yeah, you can hold more people in the pod to do experiments and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it feels like it probably separates as well. I mean, the whole question, can Phoenix land? It probably can. But if you're going to make a more long-lasting thing, that would make sense to have the ship be able to separate. What if, if you're testing the newer drives, either the front section separates and can land home, or maybe that section below, before the shield just separate, have modules in the module. I mean, I buy this. I mean, it doesn't look very Star Trek-y, the front pod, but I mean, I buy it. Something that it's what's the step after a rocket? It's a rocket with a cool pod, and it looks like it could be. This is the first gen work bee, or Sphinx. There you go. It's yellow.
Yeah. I was looking at the color, thinking that too, but I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're kind of getting off track. But these are all the ships called Bonaventure, and they do have a distinct place in Star Trek history.
Yes.
It could be argued for each one of them that each one is canonical, but whatever. Let's move back to the ship we were talking about in
Oh yes,
the TAS one,
the crazy Connie. So this is good. We've seen two other views of it, the top and the front. they give different like feelings of it. The side view makes it feel very fat and very squished, but the top view makes it feel very Connie-ish, but with a different saucer. Like not a saucer, it's now an egg almost. And the front view makes it look squished and mega just pointy uppy. I don't know, what's your think about these? Your feeling?
I like seeing these other views because it looks very less kit bashy from these different angles. You know, you look at it from the side, you go, okay, they just took a Connie and just modified the shapes. But to modify all of the shapes, make it not a saucer, make it kind of an ovoid, you know, and the front view is totally an exaggerated Connie, I guess. I don't know. It makes it feel more real to me, because in the animated series you only see it from the side ever. At least I believe so, anyway. So you never get a sense of, and you know, we've seen that before where we get a ship posted on the Trekyards page and it's like a side view. It's like, that looks great. Can we see other views? Sometimes there aren't other views, and it just, you can't judge a ship just on its profile look, because it could look fabulous. Like honestly, the JJ Prize profile is fabulous. I love it. It looks like a hot rod. It looks good. The engines are a little big, but they're proportioned for the ship and they're spaced nicely. But then you get the top view and you go, oh my good God, what did they do? Because they're like this close together. Totally ruins the whole ship. So this one, I think, actually helps the ship a little bit, in my opinion, at least from the top. The front looks kind of silly, but the top looks cool.
Yes, the front is a bit. Well, they're trying to make it, push it far enough away from the saucer to not kill people, I assume.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that because it's an experimental warp system, right? So
what kind of bugs me now is that it says SS Bonaventure 10283 NCC. What on earth is that about?
I don't know.
Because I assumed the one was like a dash, but if it's actually 10283 NCC, I mean, I don't even. I mean, the original
even if it ended
version,
in NX would be better.
I mean, the original version had that too. I just assumed it was two dashes, as I said before, dash 028 dash, and that would make kind of sense. But if it's that, I mean, that's an appallingly silly.
It is. I don't know. See, I'd like to know who designed this initially for the animated series, which animator did it, because I'd like to talk to them. I really would.
Do you think they just got drunk and tried to draw the Connie, and then woke up and said, "Here we go. Here's the new ship"?
Maybe. Yeah, they were doing the show. Oh, go to sleep, and then they realized the next morning, oh my God, I needed a new ship for today's episode. Oh, look at this. This is kind of a Connie. Yeah, here you go. I planned that.
Solved. Let's move on to the next picture, which is a better detail. Actually, we get an actual internal space sense. Still a lot of stuff going on. Kind of feels bigger than the previous views, I'm going to be honest. It says the saucer's 2 decks. So like it's got a shuttle. It's got like a captain's yacht shuttle in the bottom of the saucer, which is very interesting. I mean, a front facing shuttle bay. There isn't any indication in the other models, but I mean, this is just a fan version.
This is like a 20 deck version. It does look bigger than the other ones we've seen. Plus, it's got an arboretum, which is cool.
Oh, that's
that
cool.
Seems unnecessary on a first warp ship, but you know.
Well, no, I'd say it seems more necessary because you need air.
Who needs air? What are you talking about?
So it's got a lot of shuttles. Where is the engineering room exactly? Because I feel like there's a little there's conduits going to the impulse and to the thing. There's a little room that has just a little bar and 2 things on top. That seems like a very odd warp.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thing.
I just zoomed into this, and it's very like 8-bit pixely. It's funny, and you notice there's people in the warp nacelles. Just saying. It's worth pointing that out.
Maybe just the back part is, because those ferns are surviving just fine, you know.
Well, even in the strut by the window, there's a little table with chairs.
There's a room in every part of the strut. Oh, dear.
It's interesting. I think somebody was just having fun with it.
Yeah, and that little bump at the back of the secondary hull on the top, that just has seating. I think that's a basketball arena or some sort of auditorium.
It does look like an auditorium. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, this is not definitely not canon, but I thought I'd include it because it's good for a lot. And I want to show you guys some of the stuff we find when we're looking for ships. I find this stuff all the time, and we got to try to talk about it and work it into canon.
If you look at the neck, the saucer side of the neck, they've got steps, and there's one guy. There's a guy falling down steps.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
It's a very strange place for steps. Okay, well, let's move on to the next picture before we die of laughter. You found this one, more 3D images. Do you have anything you wanted to bring up about this one?
This one I like. I like the lower 3/4 view. I think it's very reminiscent of the Connie there, and actually makes the ship look realistic, like something that could possibly exist. Its proportions are kind of ridiculous in a lot of views, but that one I don't mind. Same with the 3/4 from the top, looks all right.
Yeah, it looks like a proto Connie. I think if you took away the fact that it has all the same colorations as the Connie, really detract from its proto state. Because if you made it more silvery, have really big plating, I think this could be a not gonna say a natural progression, by God no, but you could certainly fit it in slightly better if you NXified a bit more. I've seen some really great NX styled proto Connies that just like, oh, that's gorgeous. I mean, that works beautifully. This doesn't work as well, but I mean, yeah,
just nice. Take somebody did a good job on this. So, but
yeah,
the next picture is another size chart.
Okay.
It's got the Bonaventure at 212 meters, which is pretty much what we've seen all along. But this compares it with other ships from the animated series.
Okay, cool.
One of my favorites being Kublai Khan's ship there at 700 meters. That's cool.
Oh, the dragon thing. Cool. Some interesting designs. I like the cargo drone. It's a good design.
Yeah, it is, and that's the one they use in the remastered series. The Huron's interesting too. I like that. But we are going to do more animated ships. Trust me, guys. I got a folder full of pictures for you guys for mission briefings.
I do now have the cargo drone as an eagle moss, so I can fly it around. I know Rob Bonshun did the first 3D model of it, like the proper like detail one, and so it'll be exciting to be able to do some renders of that. Cool. And I see lots of new TOS shuttles, so that's interesting.
Yeah, the shuttles are going to be interesting to cover because there's quite a few renders and animations of some of them. So
the Aqua shuttle kind of looks like they took a Battlestar Galactica Viper and just TOS'd it.
A little bit, yeah. And the Copernicus looks a lot like the Starfleet Battles fighters, but we're getting off track here.
Yes,
let's go to the next picture, which is also the last picture, which is a great. Looks like it's from a game actually.
It's like a low res bridge commander or something, yeah.
Yeah, which is really kind of neat. I thought this would be a great one to end on because it's kind of the ship that we only saw in 2 dimensions in the animated series, kind of fleshed out in 3 dimensions, and kind of just. This is how it would look now if there was an animated CGI show. There you go.
I'm going to say this one makes it look better. I think the saucer is actually a saucer in this version, or much closer to. This feels better to me, proportionally. Just a bit. The way it's done. They haven't got the same gentle curve on the aft shuttle bay, which is another showing that it's not the same ship. And just a few little subtle things here that I think actually works more to its lackluster feel, but it's it's an interesting one.
It was a good one to end on. We're bringing it into the more modern age, kind of, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so a great ship, one of those ships in Star Trek history that is just multiple personality disorder. It's got a lot of incarnations and a lot of story behind it. Take whichever one you want, or combine them and make your own canon, as we always say. But I think it's a cool little ship, and it was worth definitely including in our mission briefings because, like I said, I'm actually looking forward to doing a full episode. I don't know if we can do a full episode on this one. I don't think there's enough information. Maybe we should just do a history of the Bonaventure and include all of them in one.
I would, yeah, that'd be my guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not complicated models. We can probably get our friend model makers out there to do all 3, and then just do the whole history, and then
have them all flying side by side would be fantastic, actually.
Yeah. So I think we knew going into this, there's not much to say, but it's such an interesting part of TOS history that we had to give it a look and dissect it a little bit and give our opinions. And I'm surprised how small it is. but it works in that sense. And let us know what you guys think. I mean, it is an oddity, and it is there though. It exists. So let us know what you think. It's as close to side canon as you can get. So let us know what you think. And suggest what episodes you want to see in the future for us. We've got a lot of ships to do, a lot of odd ships, a lot of TOS animated stuff. If you want to see more of that, let us know. And if you want to support this show, please do, because weekly content like this, several days a week, takes a lot of time and energy, and that takes the money which we would spend for jobs, or not spend, earn for jobs. So basically, if you want to support us, go to Patreon /Trekyards and give what you can, or a one-time donation at trekyards.com, just to help this show keep going for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks later, and do more crazy stuff like this. That's my last thought. Any last thoughts for you, Stuart?
No, just stay tuned. We're gonna have more animated series ships coming up from mission briefings down the road, and I'm looking forward to doing some of them because they're cool designs. Some of them are kind of odd.
Until next week, guys, this is Commander Cookins.
And Captain Foley, this guy.
I will see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.